is, there it is. It is 6:01. I am Councilmember Johnson. I'll go ahead and call this meeting of the Community Development Committee to order. And we will note the attendance of Council members Christensen and Mayhew, as well as I see the mayor is joining us remotely. I don't see any other council members. Our first order is to approve the agenda. So unless there are any changes that are desired, we'll go ahead and approve the agenda as is. Okay, and that will be the agenda approval. That takes us to public comments. I am not seeing any members of the public joining us in person, nor am I seeing any online. I suppose that technically city staff are members of the public, and if they wanted to make public comment, they're welcome to. Okay, not seeing any takers. That takes us to the minutes. For the meeting on July 17th, 2023. I did not see any issues myself. Did any other council members see anything they want to change?
I had nothing to change.
Then we will consider the minutes approved as is. We have one agenda bill before us this evening, and that is the multifamily property tax exemption. And I believe that Community Development Director Arteche is going to tell us a little bit about what this is, and then we'll have a discussion and we'll decide on what to do with it.
Good evening, council members. My name is Emily Arteche. I am the Community Development Director. You may have recalled last winter when we were working through the mill site development agreement that we designated the mill site as a residential targeted area. And we made a commitment to come back to you before the end of the year with a resolution that would allow that designated area to move forward. At the same time, we also informed you that there was some significant changes to the RCWs that provide the guidelines for how to administer a multifamily tax exemption code ordinance. And so we're back here today with those changes. We've got two items, the resolution and an ordinance, an implementing ordinance, and accompanying the implementing ordinance are the draft strikeout and underlying revisions to this Snoqualmie Municipal Code.
Did you guys get the advanced materials? I didn't get that.
I did not get a one with any.
Well, sorry, did I say strikeout and line? Maybe I meant just a clean version.
Oh,
clean
okay.
version, clean version. So there were several changes that needed to be made. And so this is completely redoing the code to mimic the state RCWs.
If there were any highlights you could point out for benefit of the public, that'd be
sure.
That'd be great. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So the multifamily housing property tax exemption is a state law providing for an 8 or 12 year property tax exemption on new, expanded, updated multifamily housing. The exemption applies to only residential portions of new constructed improvements, not the value of the land, retail space, or existing improvements. No exemptions are identified in the Snoqualmie Municipal Code 3.10 multifamily tax exemptions. The recently approved mill site, which I mentioned earlier, development agreement requires that only the residential area identified on the approved planned commercial industrial PCI permit is eligible to apply for this exemption. So those are the primary highlights of the code amendments.
Was there anything? Yeah, there's only strikeout. Was there anything else you want to share with us before we jump into discussion?
No, but I'm happy to answer further questions.
Right. Okay, I did have two quick things I want to make sure that I hit. Are there any other state law changes that would need to be added at a later date? Was there anything new in state law that might be a little bit more difficult to implement in some way that we're going to tackle down the road? Or does this pretty much cover?
This covers us. This brings us up to speed.
And kind of similarly, are there any changes to the code beyond what the state has required, apart from just meeting our requirements to, according to the development agreement with Snoqualmie Mill Ventures?
No.
Other questions? Councilmember Christensen.
So I had a question about, so as I was reading through the proposed language, it stated that the applicant or the property owner at the end of the term for which they were having their tax exemption period, that they were required to provide the tenant notice and relocation assistance in an amount equal to 1 month, or is provided by the RCWs. And then it stated that it was for the folks who were eligible, but I didn't see necessarily, other than occupying an affordable unit at the time that it expired, whether there were any other conditions for them to get that relocation assistance.
Are you talking about the very end of this ordinance?
Correct. Yep.
What page is that?
Page
12, annual certification.
Yeah, it's down there. There's also citations to it on page 5 of the draft SMC.
So you're talking about qualifying for an extension?
Well, it's addressed down there, but it seemed like when the term expires for the period of which the owner has that multifamily tax exemption, that they're required to assist their tenant with an amount equal to 1 month of rent. And I was just trying to determine who exactly would be entitled to that, whether it was just anyone who's living in one of the affordable units at the time, or if there were additional requirements that were in there.
I can research that and get back to you.
Okay, I was just curious because it wasn't, to my knowledge, something that we'd spoken about before.
Yeah.
I think that it's a nice idea to kind of provide that kind of a bridge to help folks get into a different housing situation, especially if they've been in there for a while. Or even if someone who hasn't been there, who needs that assistance there. But I just was hoping to get a little bit more information about who would be entitled to that.
Councilmember Mayhew.
Yeah, I had the same question and I wasn't quite clear. So maybe when you come back with that answer, you could just clarify. I'll say the words, I wasn't clear exactly how that works, but here's what was confusing to me is, and this is going to tie into a question I'm going to ask here because I'm very confused about 20 years as well. But it occurs to me that 8 + 12 is 20, and somehow the answer might be in math. But anyway, I don't quite understand it yet. But I just wanted to be sure I understood that it worked the way that Councilmember Christensen just said, which is, does it mean that whenever this ends, whether it's 8, whether it's 12, or whether it's 20, at whatever point this MFTE ends, is that then when they get the 1 month, or just sort of what are the variation, like how would that work? I just sort of got confused. And then part of the reason I'm confused also is I thought that and maybe I'm just wrong on the facts, but I thought that the requirement for in the development agreement was that the 10 and 12% for moderate and low income were 50-year requirements, not 8, 12, or 20. Mm-hmm. And so I was just a little confused. Is this something that kicks in at, say, 8 or 12 or 20, which then seemed odd to me if in fact they were just continuing to provide that anyway? Why is this kicking in? So I just sort of couldn't figure out the permutations of how this would work. It doesn't seem like we would want, if someone's in one of these units, say a 60% AMI unit, and the MFT is ending, but this is going to continue to be offered as a 60% AMI unit, then it didn't seem like we would be looking for the landlord to make some payment. So it seemed like this was intended to be something, hey, if someone's having to move out, they're losing their 60% AMI. So either their rent's going up or they're having to move out, that this was intended to help bridge that. And so I just sort of couldn't quite figure out the permutations of how this worked. And I probably could have studied it longer, but I sort of said, hey, I'll bet there's a really smart person at the city that can explain this to us.
If we could provide a response, if it's simple enough, could we provide a response back to you via email or to the chair?
Or just to the
Yeah.
committee.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
We'll see if we could do it that way. If it gets complicated, we can talk to the chair about bringing this back.
Okay, any other questions or thoughts on this agenda bill? Councilmember Christensen.
So just my question is, it looks like this is set then, assuming this goes forward from here, it's going to be published. It'll be published for 2 weeks or whatnot, and then it'll come back, we'll have a subsequent public hearing on the matter. Is that correct?
Correct.
And as we walk through it, then it will be focused just on this and not any of the rest of the mill site development agreement or any of that. Is that accurate?
Accurate, correct, yeah. The mill site is its own development agreement with its own stipulations that vary from this particular set of code amendments.
Okay, thank you. And just when it's introduced that way, if we could just make that very clear from the very outset of the meeting, just so that we can set exactly what will be heard that night. Would be my preference.
And Councilmember Mayhew.
So just, I have a few, but I can take them, so I kind of, sure, I'll wait a second, let you catch up. We're slaughtering you with questions. Okay. So back to, I think I kind of alluded to this, is I kind of, I want to ask this hopefully well, so I don't send you on a goose chase. I'm just not quite clear on 8, 12, and 20. If I sort of start with the agenda bill itself, it talks about 8 and 12 on the introduction section, but then by the time we get to background, 8, 12, and 20 are discussed. And so we sort of sometimes talk about 8 and 12 and sometimes 20, and I sort of got lost. So there's a bunch of these where I just kind of get lost in. I thought there was a good attempt here, and I just failed to understand it, to explain, by the way, the development agreement has a 50-year guy. So I'm cognizant that, hey, these just may be different things. That's okay. I don't need to like if you just say, no, these are different things. Here's how the 8, 12, and 20 works. The 50 is a different thing. That's good. I don't need a re-explanation of the whole. But I just want to be sure I understood that. And then, yeah, so I have some other items, but yeah, so just basically I titled out the 20-year question. I just don't quite know how 20 works and then how that relates to the 50 or the 8 or the 12.
It appears that the 20 was left off because it's in the background section. So in this agenda bill, I think that might be just a typo.
I thought,
Yeah, so sorry about
I was
that.
hoping that might be
Yeah.
it, but then when I went and read the ordinance, it only lists 8 and 12. I didn't find 20 in there. Now, it's very possible I simply went too fast. So sorry.
Okay.
I thought the ordinance had 12 and 20, but not 8.
Sorry. Yep. So that probably is why I was further confused. I thought I saw 2, but not 3. And so I sort of got more confused at that point.
Under 3.10.030, I see the 8 and 12.
310, which?
It's right up there.
I can't read that.
Yeah, 3.10.030 tax exemption. They talked about the 8-year and the 12-year.
Right. Yeah, that's what I
In the
saw.
actual ordinance, it's only the 12 and the 20,
Oh, dear.
right?
Where do you see that? Is there a section? Oh, in the whereases?
Yeah, and whereas.
It's 8 and
There.
12 under 030.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So it lists 12 and 20.
But that's also referring to the engrossed second substitute Senate Bill 5287. Let me switch back to the actual code. And unfortunately, it's my understanding that the city interim city attorney is sick. today.
Yeah, but I've been working in with this community development department's been working in concert with David Linehan at Madrona. So perhaps this is all very explainable. So let me go back and look and find out why the 20 is missing.
Or just how it works, maybe there's a
Yeah.
decoder ring.
The
yeah.
50 is clearly the development agreement, a separate unrelated document that allows the city to do extraordinary things, right? But there should be an explanation of why this is just limited to the 2 time periods and not 3.
So I think the only reason the 50 sort of really got in my head is back to the item that Councilmember Christensen brought up, is I was trying to process through why would someone get a payment? Why would we expect the landlord to make a payment to someone who's not, losing any, what's the right word? Who's not losing who's not losing anything financially. They're continuing to be at whatever percent AMI they're at. So their rent rather is. And so I think that's the only thing that sort of got me confused. So maybe there's a nuance there where we can let maybe that can be reworded so that benefit would only happen when the landlord was actually eliminating the lower rent level. I don't know if that, or just address the question of why would we have them make a payment if nothing changed for the tenant?
Councilmember Christensen.
The other question that I have is, since we're doing this specifically in connection with the mill site development and a development agreement that's already been, to my knowledge, executed and bargained for, negotiated, all of that. Whether it would be advisable for us to be doing this at this point, since it would have the effect of, well, I would just want to make sure that the city attorney reviewed this, since the effect of this would be, we've already agreed on the multifamily tax exemption, and then this would require 160 one-month payments being tendered potentially to renters there. I could see that kind of language perhaps being done if we were looking at opening up to additional residential areas instead of just focusing this on one entity. We might consider that the financial burden of that.
So-
I don't know that I'm being clear on this.
I
but
think you are. Are you suggesting that there's an agreement in place and this might seem to unilaterally modify that and require additional from the landlord? And so can we just think about that?
Yeah, and make sure
Okay.
we run it past council to make sure that that's something we should be doing.
And-
To the
and-
extent, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Just again, like to the extent that we are opening up additional areas to the city, it might be something that would be a different outcome, because people could plan for it and things like that. And while there is still planning opportunities here for the folks that would potentially be doing that, I would just have some concerns about those.
I'm not sure
existing
if I'm
agreements.
following you 100%. So the mill site is its own targeted area.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be following these precise rules.
Is there an assumption that that development agreement is kind of grandfathered in? And so these rules could not be perceived as
Well,
modifications
Yeah, we
to
could
the agreement?
we could verify that with David Linehan, but yeah, essentially the development agreement is our agreement. It's our legal binding agreement with the developer for those units. So we've locked it in with these percentages at these AMIs for this time period.
For this time period.
For this time period, yeah, which is the 50 years total with the extension. These amendments would essentially apply to, you know, new targeted areas. Maybe they don't have a development agreement associated with it, and these would be the rules that the city adopts for when those new targeted areas come in.
Okay.
But we could have David explain that too, if that would be helpful, or I could just verify it, you know, whatever you think is best.
Excuse me. Councilmember Mayo.
That'd be helpful. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure. Strike those words. I'm not sure I follow what you just said. I think this would this not, correct me if I'm wrong. This, what we're looking at here would be the implementing MFTE that we committed to do in that development agreement. And therefore it would govern the MFTE that they would then apply for. Is that not correct?
I'd have to go back and read the development agreement. I'm not sure that it mentions that the city has to abide by this particular title and this chapter regarding multifamily tax exemption. My understanding is that the development agreement, the way that I remember it, is that it was very targeted for this particular development. And the only requirement that we had was just designated as a targeted area.
All right,
So the main point of this exercise was to get you the targeted area, which we could have done just independent of these changes, but also go through an implementing ordinance to say, hey, we know that state law changed and we want to update it with these time periods of, you know, 8, 12, and 20, and make sure that it's only the residential portion of any improvement, not anything that's existing and not anything more than the residential. So that those are kind of things that are working in harmoniously together, but they're not the same.
Okay, so there are two things happening. We have a resolution and we have an ordinance, and the resolution is us upholding our end of the deal with Snoqualmie Mill Ventures. And then we have an ordinance that doesn't really have anything to do with that.
Yeah, correct. We could break this out if that's your preference too. I mean, we could come back to the city council
Two different agenda bills.
and just do two different agenda bills and just separate them out and clear out the mill site, you know, requirement, if that would be your preference, and then come back and do a public hearing regarding, you know, the actual code amendments.
That
it's too
might be more
confusing.
clear.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that might be more clear.
Yeah, Councilmember Mayhew.
I'd really encourage us to do that. I think
Yeah,
both just because, just as we've had here, questions around the code changes, really to a point I think you're making is, look, that's a different matter.
Mhm.
The thing we agreed to do in the DA is designate this.
Yeah.
So I would encourage us, let's do that.
okay, great.
Boom. And then separately, if we're gonna
Yeah.
look at changes, and let's sort of separate them into separate agenda bills and handle them
I agree.
separately.
Perfect. Yeah,
Because actually, I think if I'm not wrong, the resolution,
Mhm.
we just doing,
you can just do it. Yeah,
Right?
you can just, we
Whereas-
could bring that forward at the next council meeting and move forward with it, even if you'd like to put it on consent. And then
Uh,
maybe come back maybe at the next CD meeting and just work through some of these questions.
Yeah, I struggle to see how much would really be controversial about the resolution. So I would be fine with putting that on consent.
Perfect.
I would too
I
accept,
see head nods.
well, I
Let me
think,
just look at it again real quick.
I think there's there's a number, item number 2.
Okay.
Ordinance, sorry, I've lost track of my papers.
Yeah,
Here it
I'm
is.
just talking about the resolution.
Yeah, in the resolution,
section
there's
2?
something called section 2, and I think maybe you just don't need that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if we need to have a hearing, then obviously we.
Oh,
have
yeah,
to do that.
this 2 whereas is up from the bottom says we do have to have a hearing. Is that true with relation to the resolution?
Yeah, I believe that is true with the designation under RCW 840403. but we were planning on doing that anyway.
Okay, well, I mean, if we have to have a public hearing on the resolution as well, then I just think we should have two public hearings, right? One for the ordinance.
One
One
for
for the
designation.
resolution.
Yeah, we could
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
That makes sense. It does give people the opportunity to really separate those two issues. Like if they want to make a public comment regarding the Snoqualmie Municipal Code changes, great, they can do that. If they want to make a public comment regarding the designation of a residentially targeted area, they could do that. But it doesn't mix the two up.
I think that being the case, I'd prefer to see it separated out too. I think it'll be helpful that way. And yeah, just to get that public comment.
Councilor Mayhew.
So then I guess I'm not exactly understanding the sequence solely focusing on the resolution. So this is a resolution that says we intend to designate, which seems to be required and start a process, which includes a public hearing, which I assume that following that, there will be another resolution where we actually designate. So
Well,
maybe
we
this
could
is still
shore that-
needed
we
to
could-
start.
We could
the-
shore that up.
No, it's
Yeah,
okay if that's
yeah.
the point. What the point I'm making is if the first is just to start a process, let's get that passed, to
Yeah.
start the process. But because I think that's what this is. If this is the actual adoption, then maybe we have to wait till we've had I just wasn't
Yeah,
clear.
no, I think
I'm confused.
I think that you are correct that this is the intention to designate. Yeah, I don't think. Oh, that's
May
interesting on
adopt a
section
resolution.
2. Section 2, a public hearing to seek public comment on and consider the designation. Yeah, I guess section 2 could be interpreted as being saying that we're considering the designation, but I guess that's also just a way of saying that we intend to do it. It doesn't say, as far as I can tell, that we are designating that site. With this resolution.
Oh, so section 2 is just saying, hey, there's gonna be a public comment. I see.
We could
Okay, well,
even
that's good.
update the resolution with a whereas saying that we had a public hearing on these dates, and make it very clear, it has to run for 2 consecutive times. Once a week for 2 consecutive weeks, not less than 7 days, not more than 30 days before the day of the public hearing in a given paper. So we could even update the resolution before adoption with indicating that we did a public hearing on these 2 dates. Or we did a public hearing and we had the notice of the public hearing running for these 2 consecutive weeks.
Okay. Okay, so it sounds like what we need to do is make those 2 little changes, separate these into 2 things, and then we would treat these as 2 separate agenda bills. And at the next council meeting, we can hold a public hearing for the code amendments.
Well, yeah, we'd have to have a public hearing for the designation of the residentially targeted
Right,
area.
that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Councilor Mayhew.
Yeah. I'm confused whether that in fact is correct, what you just said. What this seems to say is, now, forget the ordinance. I'm solely talking about the resolution.
Mhm.
What this seems to say is step 1, make a resolution that you intend to designate. Step 2, publish, hold a public meeting. Step 3, then look to make such a designation.
Okay, so we don't necessarily need a public hearing for the intent to designate. We
I
can
don't
say that we
think so.
intend that we.
I
We
think
could
we
say
need
that we intend-
clarification,
Yeah,
yeah,
we need
from attorney.
clarification from council.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, the governing authority must give a notice of a hearing held under this chapter by publication of the notice once a week for 2 weeks before the date of the hearing in a paper given of general circulation. So following the hearing or continuance of the hearing, the governing authority may designate all or a portion of the area described in the resolution for a residentially targeted area. And then after the designation of a residentially targeted area, the governing authority must adopt and implement standards and guidelines to be utilized in consideration of applications and making the determinations required under RCW 84-14-060.
And that then would be the ordinance, is that correct?
Yeah, so we could do them one after another like that. Just bring back the Snoqualmie Municipal Code changes sometime in September, maybe the second week in September,
Yeah, that
or the
works.
second meeting in September.
Councilmember Mayhew.
I'd encourage us to continue moving forward. There's no reason to slow this down. And I'm holding the ordinance. Let's move to the ordinance at the earliest possible time. Let's just do it as a separate matter and let's let city attorney advise us as to the sequencing.
Okay, well, I will go back and just have a discussion with our city attorney regarding these questions that you had. Talk to him about breaking these up into 2 agenda bills with the resolution going forward first, and then the implementing ordinance second, and perhaps they could go on the same day, or maybe one
I'm fine with them going
one
the
meeting
same day.
after another.
Yeah.
You know?
Mhm.
I think it's great breaking them up.
Yeah, I think that'll be less confusing. to
I think it'd
everyone
be less
involved.
confusing, yeah.
It'll be important to have a clear record.
And that way people can find when we did stuff in the minutes and
Yeah,
stuff.
And
in
we'll
the
find
future.
out the difference between the 8, 12, and 20.
Yeah, that's a big thing we need to clear up.
Yeah.
Councilor Mayhew.
Yeah, so then just to close out on the resolution.
Mhm.
I think without knowing. Hold on. Let me see if I can understand this a different way. Okay, so my thought would be if this resolution is, if my sequencing belief or understanding was correct, that there's this, and there's this other stuff, and then there's another resolution. This may be therefore the correct thing to start that. So I would say maybe we could approve this to move forward as long as that's a correct understanding and the city attorney doesn't say, wait, no, you got to change it. If we have to change it, then I think we need to see that change.
Yeah,
But if not, I'd say if he says, no, this is the right first step on your resolution, then I'd say maybe we're in a position to approve that to move forward now.
One comment, Chair.
Yes.
I would just say, I would throw out there again that as we get closer to adopting the resolution, we can add in a whereas documenting the 2 consecutive publications and the hearing date. And that might be a nice enhancement to the resolution.
Councilor Mayhew.
Yeah, what I'm saying is I think that's a different resolution. I think there are 2 resolutions.
Okay.
There's an ordinance, I think 2 resolutions. Let's call it a start the ball rolling resolution, which is what I think this is. And then, okay, now we've gone through the process, we're ready to make a designation. I think that's a separate, I think.
Well, let
resolution.
me go back and double check with him. You know, I think it's good clarification. If
Yeah,
we
which is the
could do
case.
one resolution, my preference would be one resolution, but if
Sure.
we need the 2, we can get the ball rolling with the one we have.
Yeah.
And then,
So it sounds like is the understanding that we're having and that we need to get clarification is that the resolution before us now starts the process. And then at the following council meeting, after the council adopts this resolution, we would have a public hearing. And then I believe we could immediately in that same meeting adopt a separate resolution from the one that's before us right now. That would be the designation itself of the property. And then if that's correct,
yeah,
the we could probably just do that, but it's just going to take one extra meeting.
Could be. My thought is that we're probably going to go back to one resolution, and if we need to fix this one to make it work, that's what we'll do. But let me double check with him.
Yeah, exactly. And if that's the case, then I think that we should proceed under that understanding. And that we could adopt the designation, however that works, at our next council meeting, if you're able to consolidate. If it does actually have to be two separate things, then it sounds like we might have to wait 2 meetings to actually adopt
Yeah.
the designation.
We could-
Because we'd have to do the initiation, which is this, and then at the next council meeting, we would designate
How,
following
how-
the public hearing.
how would you feel if I followed up with you, in short order in the next couple days to lay out whether or not we could use one resolution or do the two?
Yeah, that'd be
Okay.
great. How's the rest of the committee feel about that? Councilor Mayhew.
So I'm willing to vote to send this resolution as drafted forward.
Okay.
I'm not willing to vote yes to move a resolution forward that I haven't seen.
All right, sounds great. I think it would just come down to our city attorney, providing that extra explanation about why it's worded such.
Mhm. So if this one can be easily understood to include a designation, and that draft can be sent to the committee before the next council meeting, would that be acceptable? The committee. Councilor Mayhew.
But I think we haven't done our committee responsibility if we haven't had a chance to discuss it.
Okay.
Now, no, look, if it's a minor thing, we need to change, a couple words, but they're not substantive. Fine, let's keep moving.
Mhm.
But if we're saying, oh, no, now it has to change, now it is going to be adopted, because this is not adopting.
No.
It's an intention. It's a declaration of an intention. So if we're going to actually adopt, then I have a whole bunch of questions about why that's okay. And how that works, which could be answered. I'm not saying I'm against it. I just don't understand it. But if it is, this is just, no, we start the ball rolling by declaring an intention, and then that enables other things to happen, then let's get going.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That sounds like consolidating may or may not be helpful at all.
Well, let me just follow up with the city attorney one more time, and then, maybe we could just move forward like Councilmember Mayhew just suggested.
Okay. All right.
At the next council meeting.
Excellent. Then we'll follow up in the
I
next
thought the
couple
next
days.
council may be the second council meeting in August.
Okay.
I have some other thoughts on the ordinance when you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready.
So I think we've dealt with our thoughts on the resolution. Is
I
that
think so.
correct? Yeah. So on the ordinance, the 8/12/20, which I think you've already taken down, I'm just confused on. I'm a little confused on why they would pay if the unit is going to continue to be at that AMI. And so maybe we can put in some kind of carve out that instead of tying it to the expiration of the MFTE, maybe it ties to the a previously MFTE unit. So I don't know if that's what you said. A unit that was previously. You know what? I'm not a lawyer, so I need to stop trying to be. If we could tie it to when the rents change, not necessarily when the MFT expires.
Expiration of the
Yeah,
8, 12, or
yeah.
20. Okay, yeah.
Because actually, I suppose I would have that thought not only about the DA, but any agreement. If they're continuing to provide, 60% AMI housing as an example, then why would we expect them to make a payment? I think we are looking for a payment when that changes, so that we can help get those folks.
Yeah, that's a
relocated.
nice suggestion.
I have another thought.
That's what I'm making.
So in the past, when the council has looked at changing the SMC, we have almost always asked for a red line version. And I've watched that actually sort of slow down the process, where something was brought forward. No one had any particular objection, But the request was, hey, before I know for sure, I want to see a red line version.
Yeah, that's why I actually said that thinking,
Yeah.
yeah, forgot
So-
we didn't do
So just in the interest of having this meet what I believe are the expectations of at least several council members, I would suggest one of two things. Now, I kind of had to stop and think about this when I read, because in the agenda bill, you explain, or it is explained that, hey, there's so many changes here. We're just going to do a chuck and replace. It didn't use those words. Those are my words.
that. Yeah,
It's a
A
highly
repeal-
legal term that I
repeal
learned
and
on TV.
replacement.
Chuck and replace, yeah. So yeah, repeal and replace. So that may be fine, but I still think then can we put in something that sort of explains, look, there were 4 substantive provisions in the old one. There are 6, but they're different. Here's what the 4 were. Here's what this, like some summarized. So if it's not red line per se, because that would be a mess, which is what I'm assuming is the reason we haven't done a red line. It's just too, like, the whole structure is different, something like, if there could just be a summary of, look, here's what was in the old one. These are the 3 substantive things there. Here's what's in the new one. And then just summarize, and here's what changes. We moved from 8 to 12. We moved from, 60% to 80, whatever it is, just sort of a summarized so that people can kind of say, okay, I get it.
yeah,
I
you're
see what
right.
we're
Yeah,
thinking."
we use that technique with the planning commission quite frequently. We even call it a crosswalk. So it's like a matrix that gives you the old, the new, and kind of the reason why.
I suspect you'll get that request anyway. So rather than let it slow us down later, why don't we just,
Yeah.
Do it now?
Yeah.
Those were my comments, Chair.
Yeah, I was wondering if it was short enough that you could just include the old one, but it is pretty long, chapter 3.
Well, no,
Yeah.
the thing about, I thought about just pulling it up and trying to do it myself. Then I thought, even if I succeed at that, I think other council members will object and they'll say, no, can you just explain it to me?
Yeah.
Don't make me hunt and peck myself. Explain it.
All great questions.
Okay, anything else at this point? Okay. So then for the code amendments, what would be the best way forward? Are we ready to have a public hearing at the next council meeting, or do we need to see this again before?
Well, nothing's prepared for the next council
Okay.
meeting. So we do have adequate time.
So we can see it again at the next
Yeah,
meeting.
well, we weren't planning on coming back to council until the 28th. But we could come back on the 21st with another,
Yeah.
more fine tunement on this.
Yeah, I think we should just do that.
Yeah,
just to make
because
sure
if
we're
we-
doing our due diligence.
Yeah, if we could kind of get us
Mhm.
all clear, then
Yeah,
I think we're in great shape. Then to hit
Especially for the
28th.
12 and 20 issue.
yeah. So briefly what I heard, we'll put these into 2 separate agenda bills. We'll clarify the 8, 12, and 20. We'll look into the issues about the timing of the payments, and if we could, fine tune that a bit. We'll look at the resolution, see if it'll carry us through all the way through the public hearing, or if that's an intro and we need to do another one. Is that,
I think so.
And the crosswalk.
and the crosswalk,
Yeah,
yeah,
the crosswalk.
that would give you the explanation of why the changes are being proposed.
Councilmember Christensen.
So the one other thing that might be helpful to as we go forward and review it is just I know that it cites that it's section 7 of the development agreement, but maybe just including at least that page of the development agreement so we can see exactly what we promised to do at the time that.
Yeah, we could
agreed
bring
to
that
it
back for the committee.
And what
That'd
we're
be
doing
great.
now.
Yeah. I have to look at it again and again. Yeah, but it's a very short little section, so
Yeah.
not no big deal. We could put that in.
And I don't think we need the whole thing, just.
No,
at
no,
least
yeah,
that
it is a very
portion.
small section for the multifamily tax exemption in the development agreement.
Yeah, that way the public and council members can really easily see, we said this is what we're going to do and this is what we're doing.
Okay,
Let it
Yeah.
match.
great discussion.
All right. Then I don't think that we're moving anything forward necessarily at the next meeting, council meeting. Councilor Meehan.
Ms. Arteche, I just want to say, we often get caught up in agenda bills and all the questions we have and all the suggestions and all that. But I just want to let you know, when I first saw the agenda for tonight and saw that this was on here, I had a very positive reaction. You know, I felt like, great, we're moving this forward. It's not at the 11th hour, just fantastic. This is how my thought was, this is how it's all supposed to work, or this is great. So I just want to thank you
You're welcome.
and tell you, just make sure you knew that was my right. So that can, like, we can forget to thank you in the middle of, well, what about this and what about that? So I just wanted to take a
Well,
minute.
I'm
and thank you.
pushing as hard as I can push. So I've been pushing behind the scenes for a few months, and I'm also very grateful to see it move forward and not be at the last hour. So we do have time to do these little things and make it the best for Snoqualmie with your
Yeah,
input.
I think that'd be a good practice just in general. If there's something that seems like it's a relatively low hanging fruit, to just get it done and not wait until the last minute, like with the EDUs, with the planning commission.
So yeah,
Why not just get it done now? since
Yeah,
we
so,
can?
and we did take that approach. You will see that come back to you at the next CD meeting. So you'll have that to also discuss. And then if I could just add one more thing,
Mhm.
you may be wondering, well, what's the schedule been like for the comp plan? Well, we are moving forward. We finally concluded, or nearly concluded, the EDC economic development element. It does go to planning commission, and it will come to you, and you will see these come through, and I will provide you, as soon as we get our senior planner back, more of a timeline, internal timeline, so you can see the sequencing of these elements as they come forward. And you shouldn't feel inundated with a, slew of these elements all at once that, sends your heart palpitating, and, your frustration level goes up, because we are trying to avoid a compounded decision at the ultimate deadline. And that, to make it easier on you, we will feed you these as they come forward, repeatedly, timely. Then you'll get into the groove of seeing it. You'll know what it is. You'll kind of get to a habit and a practice of reviewing them and then making your recommendation to move forward to the council. Wonderful. And some of the elements are actually scheduled to go, if they're more applicable, to Public Works. And so you'll kind of see a slight division there, depending on how technical it gets, like utilities or capital facilities.
Okay, well, thank you. Unless there are any other items, then I will consider us adjourned. It is 6:48. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Great.